I am Radhika Poovayya. I am a speech language pathologist and US board certified behavior analyst. I am the founder director of Samvaad Institute of Speech and Hearing in Bangalore and Samvaad Centers for Speech Therapy and ABA Therapy in Bangalore and Cambodia. My father was an army officer and I was born in Devlali, a small town in Maharashtra. Our early childhood was spent traveling from different cities in North India. Both my parents were fun-loving people and we had a great childhood. My parents, both of them wanted to be doctors. Alright, and my father always said that, one of us should become doctors. But from childhood I was very interested to be a teacher. So I would be playing teacher all the time. And I was very clear to my dad that I don't want to be a doctor. So my dad, he studied homeopathy after retirement. And he became so good and he was able to dispense medicines and was very effective. But I was never interested to be a doctor. I was very fond of children and I loved being with children. And in a wedding house also, when there were adults and children, I would rather be with children and I would be playing around with them. And that was my dream, to work with children. In the last 1997, my father's last posting was in Bangalore. So all of us got admission in Kendriya Vidyalaya, MEG. And those 4 years that I spent here were very good. It rounded my personality. I did well in studies. I represented my South Zone in sports and all extracurricular activities of painting and dance. So it was a very good 4 years that we spent in Bangalore. And I was very happy to come back and settle down in the city. After my 10th, I decided to do my pre-university in St. Agnes College, Bangalore. It was a very, good education. I mean, we all know that Bangalore is a good place for education. So it was a very good college and the classes were done very systematically. So one day when all classmates were discussing our career options, I was discussing my dilemma that I'm good at science but I don't want to be a doctor and I want to work with children. What do I do? What career do I take? I think I should become a pediatrician is what I finally came to a conclusion. Maybe I should just be a pediatrician. But I was really confused what to do. Then my friend told me that there is a field called speech and hearing. And I had not heard of this field. So I asked her to, then she told me that in this field you work with children with disabilities. And I was I was so happy to hear about this field and I said, this is what I would like to work. When I think back, I've always been in school also, whenever there was a student who was not good at studies, I was always happy to go and help her. So I had a classmate who had learning disability. Now when I think back, it was learning disability. So after school, I would spend some time and try to find ways to help her understand better. So when when this friend told me that this course is there and it is in Mysore, I was so thrilled because my father had decided to retire and stay in Mysore, live in Mysore. So it was so uncanny, that I got to know about this field. My friend was a relative of Mani Rao, who was one of the first few batches of speech pathologists who passed out from Aish. So when I went to Mysore and I announced to my parents that I want to do this course which is in Manasa Gangotri campus, they also were surprised. They said, are you sure? Do you think you can get a job in this field? What kind of field is this? But I was very clear. I said, I want to work with children, I want to work with disability, and that was decided. So when we found out in Aish, it was clear that there were only 20 seats per batch. And there were 5 per zone. So that's where that was the problem. Now, how do I get into this college? There was no other way. There were only 5 seats for South Zone. So then I put in my heart and soul and studied very well. But the admission process, we had submitted my admission and application and I was waiting with hope that I will be one of the 5 students who will get selected from South India. So for the time being, my father admitted me in Maharani's college, and I remember very clearly waiting for news that I'll get into Aish. And I was not enjoying nutrition at all, and I was really hoping I'll get into Aish. Then I remember very clearly the day my father came in the afternoon and with the postcard from Aish that said, "You have been admitted and please report tomorrow morning." So I was really thrilled that I'd got the career of my choice, and took admission in Aish, and was one of the first few people who got in. And gradually, as all the classmates got in, I realized that I was one of the few people who came very clearly with the idea, with the understanding of this field, that what it was all about. Most of them came by default. They didn't get admission somewhere else, and they just said, let's try this field. So I was very lucky that I got into the field that I wanted to, and I was very happy about that. So in 1982, I got admission in Aish, and I was so thrilled that I got admission into the course that I wanted to do, and I didn't have to do nutrition. So it was, from day one, I was very excited to be in the clinics. That was my main interest, how to change the lives of these children with different disabilities. Our batch was very quiet compared to the earlier batches, and we were about 7 of us who were from Mysore. So we have remained very close, and we kept in touch. Of my batch of 20 in graduate, not many of them are abroad. Most of us are in India. In Masters, in-service candidate Manoj Kumar joined us, and he brought in a lot of positive vibes, and it was really very interesting having him in the class. During our Masters program, a very interesting thing happened. I'm sure he was part of the committee or something, and they brought in the rule of all student clinicians wearing white coats in the clinics. So that happened during my time, our batch. Among the teachers, Dr. Ratna had the most impact on me, and I enjoyed his classes, and I think I imbibed the love for and the passion for training children with hearing impairment. And he would take us on camps. In the summer holidays, we would go on a 1-month camp to Andhra Pradesh, 15-day camp to Kerala, and at that time we would observe our teachers counseling and training and talking to people. I think we learned a lot in those camps. And in the final year, Dr. Pratibha Karanth came in, and she taught us child language, and I was totally taken up by the subject, and I think I developed such a strong love for aphasia and child language thanks to her. So in our final year, we went for a education trip, we went to Madras. Those days it was Madras. We went to Madras for our educational tour, and we spent some time in the Little Flower High School and Bala Vidyalaya. I was so taken up by the methods that they used, and I wanted to learn those methods because I felt they were much more effective than what I did as a speech therapist in the clinic. And I'm glad later on in life I got a chance to go and learn that. So as a student also, I was always looking for better ways. Is there anything better that I can do for my clients? And I was willing to learn from parents. I would have discussion with parents of hearing impaired children and understand how they handle their children at home. And I was willing to learn from special educators. So I was very passionate about improving my clinical skills. In my final year, I got engaged. So my fiancé was a tea planter in the tea district of Munnar. I still remember Dr. Karanth calling me over, and she had got the news from her friends. And she said, "What do I hear that you are getting engaged, you are marrying a tea planter? You are going to be wasting a seat now. What will you do in the tea district of Munnar? You wasted a seat." She was very angry with me. And I didn't know what to say, but I was so embarrassed that she had come to know and that she was very upset with me. And I said, no ma'am, I really want to work in the tea district. I will work there, don't worry, I won't waste my seat. So in the 10th anniversary of the institute, I had called her as a guest and I said, ma'am, I think I have lived up to my word and I have not wasted a seat of Aish. So I got married and went to Munnar with the dreams of being able to work in the planting district. I was not such a career woman. I just thought I'd be happy to be a wife and a mother and work with 2-3 children in the tea district. There was a big tea district. It was really big with about 30 estates. So I said, I'm sure there'll be a few children that need help. I'm sure I'll be able to keep myself busy. So with that idea, I went to Munnar. When I went there, I met the chief medical officer of the district. And I introduced myself and I said, I'm a speech language pathologist and audiologist and I would love to volunteer and work in the hospital. And I was so fortunate that the chief medical officer, Dr. Cherian, he was understood and he was very cooperative and very encouraging, and he said, sure, please do come, I will make arrangements. And he gave me a room. He saw to it that he organized a meeting with the doctors and he introduced me to all the doctors in the general hospital. And within a month of moving to Munnar, I started going to the hospital. But the challenge to go to the hospital was to learn to drive, because there's no public transport in the tea district. So I had to learn to drive an ambassador car, and the estate that my husband was posted was 30 kilometers away from the hospital. So I think that was more interesting. That was a bigger challenge than going and working in the hospital. Alright, so I managed to learn to drive the ambassador and I started going 3 times a week to the hospital. So once they started referring children to me, I started getting children who were about 4 years and above. I think the youngest, so all were about 4 years and above. Hearing impaired children, children with cognitive delay, and I got one cleft palate child. So as I started the clinic, I noticed the dropout rate was very high, and it was because all the parents were labourers in the tea estates. So if they had to bring their child for therapy, they had to lose a day's wages. So I spoke to Dr. Cherian and told him, can you somehow manage to get them to be paid by the company, so that will encourage them to come for therapy. So he said, yes, I think that much the company can do for this child. And he managed to get that permission. So my clients would come twice a week, 2 hours of therapy, sometimes 1 hour of therapy, and they got their salary for that day. So the dropout rate completely stopped and my kids were regular. So since they were older kids, I knew I couldn't do beyond after 1 year of therapy, I decided to send them to Coimbatore, to the deaf school in that Coimbatore, and so that they had an education. And I thought after the education it will be easy for them to get a job somewhere. I never expected that the company would decide to start a special school and a vocational training center. So it was a pleasant surprise when we got to know that the company was interested to start a special school. So it is called the DARE project, and we were all instrumental in setting it up. So it was a very exciting period of setting it up in Munnar, and all my children got into the school. And since I had already identified so many children, they got into the schools, and after about 10 years when I went back, I was so satisfied to see all of them in the vocational training center and earning and permanent employees of Tata Tea. So it was a very satisfying tenure of 5 years in Munnar, where I set up the first rehab center in a planting district, and of course was part of the first special school in a planting district also. So I presented a paper in an ENT conference also during that period. So though I was not paid, I was just given an honorarium. I think I gained a lot of confidence in volunteering and working in the tea district. So it was about 5 years that I worked in Tata Tea General Hospital, and then my husband suddenly decided that he wanted to move to Bangalore, And I was so thrilled because now I knew that, the career options really, there's so many. I could work in Chandrasekhar Institute is what I was, because that was where my friends were working. So I was so excited that I could be a clinician, I could be a teacher if I wanted, I could do so many things in Bangalore. So we came with, great positive expectations and excitement. We came to Bangalore. And to my utter surprise, when we drove towards the house that we had rented, we passed Chandrasekhar Institute. And I had never thought that we would be living so close to the institute. So it was just 2 kilometers away. And within a week I came back. I came into the institute and met up my friends. But I was carrying my second child. So I waited for a year. After my child was a year old, then I came back to the institute and started asking whether they would give me a part-time job. But my friend said, no, Dr. Chandrasekhar doesn't give part-time jobs to anybody. So I went back. Then I thought, why not try? There's no harm in trying to meet him and see whether he would give me a part-time job. So that was a good decision I took, and I took an appointment and met him. And I said, sir, I would like to work only in your special school. I don't want to be a teacher. There was no teaching at that time. I didn't want to work in the institute setup because I didn't want to do audiology. So I said, can you give me a part-time job only to work in the special school? And to my utter surprise, he agreed. Alright, so 3 times a week I got this job in the Sunal school. So that was my entry into Chandrasekhar Institute. And after about 4 years, 3-4 years, I worked in the special school. And after that, when I wanted a change, I said, sir, I'm done with it, I want to quit. He said, why don't you do public relations? Don't quit, you be my public relations officer. So I said, I don't know anything about public relations. I am a clinician and I think that's all I can do. So he said, no, don't worry, I'll train you how to do it. Because there was a Lions Club grant that he wanted to raise money for, matching grant. So he wanted somebody to help him for that. So I went back and I thought about it and I said, okay, if this is a part-time option, I wanted a part-time option because my children were still small. So I said, okay, let me give it a shot. And that was one of the best decisions I took, of taking on something new and challenging. And I think I moved away from being just a clinician to be able to, become a public relations officer. I think that was the, kind of laying the foundation to the skills that I required to establish my own institute. So 3-4 years of being public relations officer, I raised money for the institute. I did some fundraisers. I organized programs in Chodaya and the hall, and dance programs. We organized a beautiful dance ballet by deaf children, 100 deaf children and adults. We had a beautiful dance ballet that we organized and raised funds for the school. So it was a very, very enriching experience working with Dr. Chandrasekhar, and I consider him one of my mentors too. Okay, so after doing that for 2 years, one day I get a call from a doctor friend of mine saying that her neighbor's son has had a head injury and he needs speech therapy. Okay, at that point of time, I was doing public relations for Dr. Chandrasekhar, so I was not allowed to do clinical work. But since there was nobody available, I asked him, can I take, because I always loved working with aphasia. With Dr. Karant, I had worked in a few cases, so I was looking forward, and he gave me the permission to work with this young boy who was just 19 and he had a head injury. So working with him rekindled my love for aphasia, and I said, I gave him therapy for about 1 year, and then I decided to quit Chandrasekhar and work full-time in hospitals and work with stroke patients. So that's how I quit Chandrasekhar Institute after 7 years and joined Hosmat and Manipal Hospital. And I was a visiting consultant for the neurology department. After 2 years of working in different hospitals as a consultant for adult language disorders, I got a little disheartened because there was not enough cases of aphasia, and they didn't last long for therapy. So they would just come for 1 or 2 sessions and they would discontinue. So I didn't enjoy just keep doing assessments and assessments. So we decided that I would start a clinic. in a very formal manner, not to have a private practice from my home. I wanted to do it in a different place and have it very official. So I hired a receptionist and I hired a speech therapist also. So Sarah was the speech therapist, and together we decided to start this clinic in Indiranagar in Bangalore. And it was very exciting to set up the clinic and started advertising about it, meeting doctors. So all my PR skills of Chandrasekhar helped in that I learned at Chandrasekhar Institute helped in establishing my clinic. And very soon I had a lot of clients coming in. So the whole variety of cases started coming in. But with children with autism, I was at a weak wicket. I realized that I couldn't handle and didn't have a solution for all the different problems that they posed. Their language was so deviant. They would sing songs, but they would not ask for what they wanted. They would talk by themselves, but they wouldn't answer a single question. And their behavior problems really were very, confusing and very. It was very scary actually to handle a child with autism. And so I was looking for better solutions. And while I was discussing with my parents, we got to know that there is a new science called applied behavior analysis. And parents had organized the first workshop and in Calcutta, and the next one was in Chennai. So they invited me for that workshop, and I was so thrilled to attend this workshop because within the first day I understood that the ABA has the answers to all the different problems of children with autism. And that's how my journey into ABAs began. So when I wanted to study ABA, I realized that all the courses were only available in the US, and it was too expensive for us to afford the US courses. So I learned from these parents. All of us attended workshops, and I improved my skills. And I got to know about the different ways of improving the communication of children with autism, as well as how to reduce problem behavior. And so it was a very exciting phase of my life where I was learning something new all the time, every day.
Love, hard to find and even harder to keep. The book I Have No Earthly Idea, written by S.K. Radhakrishnan, takes the readers on an emotional roller coaster ride where Senthil and Sumathi, two young physical therapists, fall in love and vow to marry each other and spend the rest of their lives together. Unlike every other couple in love, they promise to be together through thick and thin. Despite their love, being the oldest in the families leaves them to deal with a plethora of responsibilities of their homes. Senthil moves to America to make a better living and improve life. Meanwhile, the love of his life awaits his return for their marriage. Their strong bond and pure love wasn't enough to keep them together. The traditions and customs of Sumathi's extended family forcibly separate the couple. Shattered and broken after losing the love of his life, Senthil struggles to recover and tries to get his life on the line once again with the help of a new career as a physician assistant and Annabelle, a speech pathologist. Will Sumathi ever return and revive the long-lost love, or will Annabelle become the love of Senthil's life? Grab yourself a copy today and find out more.
Though I was introduced to ABA in 2003, I finally did my master's from Florida University in 2009, and I completed my certification by 2011. So it was a big moment when I passed my exam from Florida University and the US board certification exam, and I got my certificate. So I was the first speech pathologist in India to have an additional qualification of behavior analysis. So it was a very exciting phase of, seeing the dramatic changes in our children, and I found the applications of behavior in all our disorders, how to improve efficiency, how to improve documentation. So all those things had a cascading effect in all my therapy practices. So in between this, in 2004, the idea and the suggestions for starting an institute, an academic institute was sown, How it happened was my classmate for masters, Manoj Kumar, he happened to come to Bangalore, and he was telling my husband that to look at education as a very good opportunity, to look at starting different colleges in allied health. He said Bangalore is the hub for education, and that he should get into education and not any other business. He said education is the best business in Bangalore. So my husband said, yeah, I think because my husband was looking for different business opportunities. So he thought, okay, let's do a college in speech and hearing, and let's expand and do physiotherapy and other colleges, other courses also we could offer. But I was dead against it. I said I cannot run an institute, and I don't think we have the capacity to run different courses. I was not interested basically. And I was a little nervous because it required a lot of investment, and it required a lot of different skill sets, which I didn't think I had it. So I completely ignored, and I said I'm not interested in it. But they kept pestering me, and every visit he would keep asking me, I think you should get into training now. You see, there's so much of a demand. At that point, there was only one institute in Bangalore, and when we asked them, they said yes, they have almost 50-60 extra applications which they cannot accommodate. So, and then what happened was, I was looking for assistants in my clinic, I was expanding, and I was not getting therapists. So I think all this together, I got convinced that I think to get into training program is important, because there's such a great need for manpower development. So the agreement was that my husband would look after the finances and the administration, and I would look after the clinical part of it. So with this decision taken, I went and met Uma Subramaniam and Kumudavalli, who were my ex-colleagues from Chandrasekhar Institute. And I gave them this news that we are planning to start a college, and would they be willing to join me? So they were very, very happy, and they committed and said, yes, we are willing to join you, and let's start one in Hebbal, which will be away from Chandrasekhar Institute, so there's no conflict of caseload at all. And Hebbal area in Malleshwaram area, there were no real good NGOs that offered comprehensive services for people with speech and hearing. So that's how we decided to start it in Hebbal. So starting the institute, the finance part was my husband's department, so he got a loan, and we started the institute in a rented building. So starting the institute was not so difficult. The second year, 2005, we inaugurated the institute in a different manner. We did not do the usual, speeches and all. We had a walkathon, and we inaugurated the institute. And so the first year went very well. We got almost 18 students, which we were surprised, and we were very happy running the course. And I tied up with Baptist Hospital and Ambedkar hospitals that were close by for the clinical caseload. But the second year was when the trouble started. The caseload, the demand for speech pathology, the demand for the courses dropped dramatically. So there was a sudden drop in demand, and we got only 6 students that year. With great difficulty, we got 6 students, and for the next 5 years, we got single digits. So one year it was 4, and 1 year it was 8. So it was so difficult. Financially, it was very stressful. And we were every year in June when the admission started, I would get into this mood of saying that I think it's time that we close this institute, because there was no demand for institute. How long to continue when the students don't want to join this course? But what kept us going was that the students that came, 5 or 6 of them, they were doing so well. Our results were so good. So the first batch of students, the second rank in Bangalore University was taken by my student. And we were competing with a very well-established institute, at Chandrasekhar Institute. So we were very encouraged, and we said, yes, I think we are doing the right thing. And the next year, our second batch, our third batch, for 5 batches, our student got the first rank in Bangalore University. So that gave us all a lot of confidence, and I think that kept us going, because though the student numbers were very less, they all got individual attention and from all of us, and they were very good students. So they really helped us establish a name in the field. and suddenly by 2010 we moved to double digits. And by 2012, I was very happy to say that, sorry, my seats are filled up. I don't have any vacancy. So I was waiting for the day when I can tell an applicant that I don't have a seat for you, because it took us almost 7 years to fill up our seats. So that's how it was very difficult the first few years, and there was a lot of attrition. Staff were dropping out, and it was very tough for continuing the program. I had to do teaching, I had to do the clinical training as well as public relations and meeting doctors. So it was very tough for me. But what a good thing had happened was that my students learned ABA. I taught them all ABA, and taught them how we managed that was we would give every batch, we stayed back after 5:30. So 5:30 to 7, every batch was given on rotation an extra class. And I would mentor them in the sessions, in the clinics, and that's how they improved the skill, and our caseload increased. And the word got around that Samvaad was doing good clinical work.
Hi, I'm Subhashni. I'm proud to have been a student of Samvaad Institute of Speech and Hearing. I passed out in 2014, and I've worked in India, Sri Lanka, and now I'm in Australia. Samvaad has molded me into a professional and given me the confidence to step into the world and serve the people with the best. The Samvaad team, led by Radhika ma'am, has taught me to be result-oriented, ethical and accountable while we transform the lives of so many people who need our services. All my lecturers have been generous to be continuously mentoring us whenever we are in need. And I'm a Sri Lankan student, and I came to India to pursue my dream, and I think the best choice I made was to join Samvaad Institute of Speech and Hearing. It has empowered me with the best education, and it's a pleasure to see how Samvaad has grown tremendously over the last few years, and I wish and pray that the whole team reaches major heights. Thank you.
One of the biggest challenges of running the institute was to improve the caseload, and I was so clinically oriented that I wanted, that was my focus, somehow to improve the caseload, because academics and theory was going very well. I had good faculty, they would teach well, students were doing well, but I was very clear that I wanted a very balanced training program where they would get enough variety of cases. So it was very difficult to have different hospitals to refer to us, and it took me a lot of time, and even to get a tie-up with a government hospital took us so much time. So there was so much of red tapeism, so it was very difficult. And then so we decided to do a lot of activities. So we did a lot of public awareness activities to increase people's awareness of the institute. So we would do walkathons, we would take part in different programs, and we would get the newspaper to write about it. I would give talks in different TV channels, and I would get, that would create awareness about our services. We would offer free camps regularly. So that's how we had to improve. It was not at all easy. So we did a lot of interesting public awareness programs. So we were, we started the noise, trying to reduce noise pollution in Bangalore. So we did a program in which we measured noise in different points in Bangalore city, and reported that this was above the permissible level. So that caught the imagination of the media, and we got a lot of media articles on that. And then as years progressed, when the police decided to take up this noise pollution of Bangalore city, we tied up with them. And we had walkathons, and we would stand, me and my students have stood on Bangalore roads holding placards that stop honking, reduce honking, and reduce the noise of your vehicles. So that was very good fun for the students. And 2 years ago I started a petition on stammering to reduce the bias against stammering. So my petition was to Ministry of Information and Broadcasting, that was to have appropriate portrayal of stammering in Indian cinema. because stammering was generally the loser in the movie was, or the villain, or some the comedy angle was brought by a person who stammered, and the audience in the cinema would stammer. So that used to disturb me. So one day I got this idea that why not start a petition to the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting and request them to portray stammering and other speech disorders appropriately. So that also we got a lot of media coverage, and we are hoping that we'll be able to get the petition, get that petition seen by the ministry shortly. So our free programs that were significant were the stroke rehabilitation unit that we decided to offer free of cost, so that we could encourage more stroke patients to come regularly. Because the children were coming, we were having a good caseload for children, of hearing impaired children, children with autism. The numbers were increasing, but stroke patients were not increasing, and therefore we decided to have provided free of cost. And because we provided free of cost, we had patients who stayed with us for 2 years, 3 years, and through them, with our collaboration with Syracuse University, we really learned so much along the way. So it was a very fruitful association, and this decision of offering it free really helped. So 2010 was a milestone that when we decided to start the master's program, and to our surprise we got a full intake of 20 seats. So that was a shot in the arm for us, and so our academic program was going well. So in the clinics, as I started teaching them ABA, what was the important difference that happened among my supervisors was that importance of supervision was inculcated in all my staff. As when I did my ABA, I understood the importance of supervision. The board demands that all students have to do almost 1,500 hours of clinical work, out of which 75 had to be mentored. So when I did my training, my mentor was in US. So I would send videos of my therapy online, and she would give me comments, and we would meet online twice a month, and that's how I improved my applications of the behavior principles for every child. So I had decided that when I start my institute, I would also do very systematic supervision for all my students. So I had to train more staff to do supervision well, and therefore the students would get supervision. So I was very much involved, and I would be in the clinics most of the time, supervising implementations of all the disorders, whether it's stammering or whether it was aphasia or it was autism. For all the disorders, I would appoint a supervisor for each disorder, and then I would train that person in the best method, best practices, and we would do regular supervision. So that's how the institute has developed a very good clientele now. So for the different disorders like stammering, the training I got was from Professor M.N. Hegde and Professor Venkat Giri. So we worked, when they would come to India, we would do workshops, and they would teach me the evidence-based methods of what they followed in the US. So I really understood how to use evidence-based approach in other speech and speech-language disorders through my interactions with these two professors. So it was very, very interesting to apply these methods in our regular and integrate it with the traditional therapy. In 2015, I happened to see a Facebook post of my classmate, Ramani Voletti. She was announcing that she was board certified in neurological disorders. So that was my chance, and I sent her an email and I said, can you please mentor me now? Because I was very keen on aphasia, and I knew the traditional therapy was not being effective at all. And I was very keen to learn the best practices in aphasia too. So that began, we had a 3-year collaboration with Syracuse University, and we presented a paper of our collaboration in the American Speech and Hearing Association conference in Philadelphia in 2016. Which won us the meritorious poster for that collaboration. So that was a shot in the arm for all of us. So what was nice about the last few years was that I had presented a poster. I had presented a poster in the International Conference for Behavior Analysts and in the ASHA. So I didn't expect that I would ever be able to do an international presentation. So that was really something. As the institute was growing well, I also expanded my clinic. I started another clinic. So presently we have 2 clinics in Bangalore, and we call it Samvaad Centers for Speech Therapy and ABA Therapy, and we offer a very unique integrated approach of speech therapy and ABA therapy for all speech and hearing disorders. I started a clinic in Cambodia in 2019 because my niece who lives in Cambodia told me that she sees so many children with autism and they don't seem to benefit from traditional therapy, and would I be interested to collaborate with her and start a clinic. So I said yes. I said wherever there is a need, I am willing to come, but somebody has to take the responsibility of administration. And when she agreed for that, I said yes, and we started the clinic in 2019 with 1 staff, and we are sending the next student, we are sending the next therapist this month to Cambodia. So that is doing well, and we are able to bring about dramatic improvements in the lives of children there also. So in 2020, Samvaad Institute completed 15 years, and I wanted to have a nice international conference. So the future plans that we have is to move into our own building, and hopefully that the next year we should be able to move into a new building. And I want to start a school for children with autism with the behavior principles of applied behavior analysis. And I also want to start a stroke rehabilitation unit where we would be able to give intensive speech therapy for people for 3 months. I want to offer that program in India. And also start an academic any kind of an academic program in applied behavior analysis with the university in Bangalore Central University. Either it could be a postgraduate diploma or a graduate program. So that will require a lot of work, of course, but that is the plan for the future. I wanted to thank my family, my friends, my staff and my colleagues who have stood by me in for these last 15 years and helped me build this institute. I would like to thank INEA Academy for this interesting initiative that you have taken to document the history of our field. And thank you very much, Nandu, for all your efforts.